Good afternoon and welcome to this week's edition of TLC's Webinar Wednesday series. My name is Jamison Reynolds. I'm the Director of Marketing Strategy with the Library Corporation, and today's session is entitled, I Do Not Love the Pandemic, 5 Customer Success Strategies for Fall 2020. This presentation is being led by Melissa Powell, who is our Customer Success Manager. Before we get started, I do want to mention that we will be taking questions as we go through this. Typically, what we try to do is if there is a time where we can seed the question during the session, we will try and jump in there with the question and answer. However, if we do not get to it, we will typically wait till the end of the session to address those questions with answers. So please do not hesitate to submit questions. And if you don't hear an answer to it, trust me, we are going to come to it. Okay, on that note, I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic over to Melissa. Melissa, please take it away.
Thank you, Jamison. As Jamison said, my name is Melissa Powell. I'm the Customer Success Manager here at TLC. And this is sort of an odd title for a corporate webinar, but there's a reason for that. It all started with a reply on a ticket to support. As the Customer Success Manager, my job is to regularly check all the different types of communication we have with our customers to just see what everybody's wants, needs, the conversations, things like that. It's a really big part of my work with product and administration, so I could take things back to them. And I was going through the ticket from one of our long-term customers, and I read this statement from Vicki Newhouse at Oldham County Public Library, and to me, it just completely encompassed the 2020. It encapsulated everything I was thinking and wanting to express about the pandemic and 2020. Especially the part where she said, for a while, we were inventing the library every 10 minutes. And yeah, you were. Everybody was reinventing everything. And specifically with the libraries, as you were reinventing everything at your library, we were reinventing it on our side, on the vendor side at TLC. So when our customers had a change come in, we were doing exactly the same thing, pivoting around, looking, going, how do we fix this? Can we work out, workflows, anything we could do with the tools we have on hand. I was spending a lot of my new job creating workflow options to help out support and customers directly. Though I do have to say our support team knows our software so well. They were slamming out solutions so quickly. They are DBAs and IT, I think, are the real stars of the pandemic, just like every other essential worker out there, which libraries are essential workers. TLC was considered essential because we are technology supporting your library even when you were closed. So that's what started this. And I said that to somebody and they're like, wow, we should really do something around that for a webinar. So basically, the world has shifted between the pandemic, politics, wildfires, hurricanes. People are really stretched to the limit. We wake up every morning dreading what might be on the news that day. Have the infection rates soared? Will libraries have to close again, or will they be opening more? How do I have to change my routine? What's a routine? What does that word mean? I don't remember anymore. It feels like we're making a flow chart that keeps getting ifs added to it. It's never ending. There's no end. It just keeps going in a circle as we keep adding more and more and more. We kind of joke about it because that's one way to deal with the stress, but everybody is under a lot of pressure right now. According to the Kaiser Family Foundation, last year between January and June, 1 in 10 adults reported feeling anxious or depressed. And those are just 2 of the different mental health issues that do come up for people. So 6-month period, 1 in 10 reported it, about 11% of the population. As of July, which is the latest data we have, 1 in 3 adults were reporting feeling anxious or depressed. 40% of our adult population, and this includes 18-year-olds, so 18 on up, and these are the people they actually surveyed. I know some of us just locked ourselves in our homes and didn't talk to anybody. So these statistics, these things, there's a lot of studies around what happens when you're under a lot of stress. And basically it's, you have a loss of control. And they say, your external conditions, you can't control them. So how do you react? Well, quite often it comes out negative emotions, such as fear or anger or hopelessness. Um, and so it's like, okay, there are all these different things, and we know this. We've known this for years, but to remember that we are still, 9 months into this, 7 months into this, still dealing with all of that. And in many ways, it's getting worse because we aren't seeing an absolute ending to it in the next month or so. Um, so you might be thinking, I thought I was going to learn about strategies and services. What's she talking about? Well, customer success. And this is what I want to share with you for your customer success. It's not just about services, it's about people, it's about relationships. And as a librarian who moved into the private sector to a non-librarian role, I've learned a lot about business practices, strategies, relationship management, a lot of those things that I wish I'd known when I was in libraries. So my goal for this webinar is to give you different ways to look at our profession, our services, how the pandemic is affecting them, and not only that, but to kind of use this time to reboot, educate, maybe reallocate resources in new ways, just a different way of thinking of things as we move into what is now officially fall 2020. As I was reviewing my notes and data from the last few months and some surveys that I put out for our customers, I started to see a pattern. So instead of going through and listing, specific, well, this library's doing this library's doing that, you might try this, we kind of all know that. We've all been sharing that knowledge of curbside workflows, things like that. So what I want to do is I want to really start with a big picture, using experiential examples from our customers, other librarians, our company, to talk about things that we need to be aware of on that high level as we're working with those specifics, because we can get so trapped in those specifics we forget to look up, to look out, and also to think of the future. So the first strategy is ascertain, basically gaining more knowledge. How is the pandemic affecting the library industry? The whole industry, not just publics, not just academics, not just the front line, but the services that work with that industry, with the patrons we're working with everybody. What is it doing? How is it shifting? What is happening? So one big advice, and especially as one of the businesses serving the library industry, is to pay attention to the businesses you depend on and what's happening with the companies that are providing service to you. Are you actually taking advantage of all the tools that are available from your library vendor? Are you checking in and saying, hey, do we already have this, or can you do this? And also, is that company shifting with the times? Is it listening to you? Is it actually talking about the future, how things are changing? One of the things we're doing regularly on the Carl side is they have a regular meeting where the customers come together and talk about what they see as the future of libraries. I've been doing that on the LS side more on a casual basis with different librarians, but it's kind of interesting to have us talk about that. What do we see as the future of libraries? Also, take the time to read professionally, and I know this is like the hardest thing to do, having been on the front lines, but the 5 to 10 minutes you take now is going to save you a lot of time, money, and even come down to saving your library in the future. You can figure out, there's a lot of services on there where they can give you the TLDR, too long, don't read, just kind of snippets of things of, hey, here's what's happening, here's the thing. I know that Library Journal and American Libraries both do that. You can just get the main things that are happening, and then you could read an article on your phone or whatever. But like I said, take that time. Also, people are putting out surveys and calling and asking a lot of questions between vendors and associations, and sometimes even other libraries. I think it's very important that you take the time, that we all take the time to answer those, because we are in a state of flux. We don't know how things are going to end. So participate in those. Figure out in your library, in your situation, in your community, what you want to share as to when we're making these plans for the future, that your voice is heard in that. So find out what people are, looking for, and really kind of look at your library and how you see it in the future. Point number 2 is to advocate. You really need to have those important conversations, and the important conversations are not just to educate others, but to learn from them as well. And I have the voted up there because in the last decade, we've really concentrated on the fact that we can't be guaranteed funding for libraries anymore. So those of us in the library industry really have to push and, get the funding out there and support the libraries for the mill levies and things like that. But this year gave us a unique opportunity. Libraries started out as rock stars, basically because of digital services. Libraries had already taken that step forward. Most of us vendors have data services. So, they were actually able to, quote, and I'm doing air quotes, close, but yet be open. And that really put libraries in the forefront. I was seeing in my Google Alerts front page articles in smaller papers about what the library was doing. I was seeing articles in the New York Times. I was seeing the Globe. I was seeing in, the Washington Examiner. I was seeing all of these different newspapers that were publishing about the local library and what they were doing. The second curbside happened, boom, there were articles all over the place in local newspapers and magazines and everything. It was a chance for the library to really shine. And so what we need to do as librarians and supporters and advocates and vendors is to ride that wave and keep moving with it. And one of the ways to do that is to basically adopt business-like practices such as public relations and long-term marketing. You really want to have marketing plans. You want to have something that's long-term. Come out with a goal and that's got many parts to it, as opposed to just, here's what we're doing today, or here's what we're doing next week, or this author's coming in. A lot of libraries are already doing this, and the more those libraries share, and then you look at how the vendors are doing it as well, of here are the things we're looking at doing in the future. We really need to take this opportunity as an industry to keep that momentum going so that they remember not only, hey, libraries, but this is what they did for the community during the pandemic. This is what they're doing as the students start to go back to school. Are you doing hotspots that people are taking advantage of? Things like that, that really puts you out there in that forefront. Now, here's one that I heard a lot from our customers was really listen to the stakeholders. And there are a lot of different stakeholders, and also do it in a very authentic way. A lot of times that person coming up to yell, and as we talked about at the beginning of the webinar, a lot of times they just want to vent. And we know this as librarians and frontline workers and anybody who's ever worked retail or some sort of a service desk, that people quite often, they don't have a problem with you. They're just fed up, or they've been waiting and it's all bottled up, and they let loose. And quite often, if you listen very authentically to, there's a kernel of something in there that they really need from you. So if we're really listening to them and not just immediately saying, no, we can't do that because, or basic customer service things. I used to teach customer service skills for librarians. So these are things we have to go back and remind ourselves of. And one of the things that was really interesting is when this all first started, my husband is a virologist, and I said to him, I said, why are people so upset? And he said, it's because you can't control a virus. You can't tell it to stop being infectious. You can't tell it, don't infect me. And so like we talked about, when you lose control, you get angry and upset, and everything just gets blown out of proportion. But then he said, the only thing we can control is our response to that which we cannot control. So I thought, okay, this is where we come in with the listening and helping our customers and educating our customers to what we're doing in our library. And yes, you may be tempted to, oh, we need to open everything up and do all of this. And if you have the choice, a lot of libraries are trying to do this. And listening to what the customers really want, not just the one who yelled at you the most, or the group that yelled at you the most, but what all your customers really want. Do they still enjoy the digital story times? Do they still enjoy the digital book groups? Maybe they aren't ready to come back out. So if you're really listening to people and responding, that's a big thing that helps people out. And one thing, next week webinar will be on the novel branch, which is actually something a lot of libraries are getting into because it's curbside but without a staff member. So tune in for that. It's a really neat uh, thing that we're selling that is just kind of fascinating and perfect timing for it in the pandemic. Oops, lost my, there we go. Now pivot, that's such a, two things probably come to mind when I say pivot. One, you're probably thinking, oh wow, that's a real business term. Or two, you're thinking of the Friends episode with Ross trying to get a couch up to his apartment and yelling pivot, pivot. But in this case, what we're talking about is being open to all of the possibilities. And one of the things to really make sure you are really paying attention to everything is really focusing on your staff. This was another thing that I had a lot of customers and other librarians say to me was, it's really hard. I don't feel like we're connecting. I feel like we don't understanding things. Everything's so different. Well, you've got people under stress, people that are on the front line trying to work in unusual circumstances. Even if you are, and we were talking about this yesterday, that even if you're standing with somebody, you're still 6 feet apart, your face is half covered, and you can't touch each other, and you still feel isolated even though you're with people. So there's a lot of stuff just constantly going on, even when it's quote new normal. So being aware of your staff and how they're affected by this, and maybe changing your schedule. I mean, you really have to be like, okay, we've always done it this way, but being open to all the possibilities, looking outside, reading a lot of things of how people are doing it. One thing I like to talk about is the sacred break. Is nobody bother you during the break. Make sure a staff person gets that break. We use Slack here at TLC as a communication tool and a project management tool. We've always used it. When it came time for when the pandemic happened and we all moved to home offices where we still are, it started using it even more, putting when we were at lunch and that, so people knew, oh, okay, if they don't answer right away and all that. But you would still get notifications, and I found myself still looking at all that, and the joy when I discovered that you could actually turn the notifications off for 15 minutes or however long you wanted to, that kind of thing. Okay, I'm going to be incommunicado because I have to be to de-stress. And that's very different than how we normally are as managers or employees or anybody, is shutting everything out for 5, 10, 15 minutes. But I think that's extremely important. We need to remember to do that. And as frontline staff members, we need to remind each other to do that. As managers, we need to remember to be aware of, hey, somebody may need a break. And the big one is communication. That's the one that a lot of our librarian customers said that, yeah, they had a way of all meeting together where it was Zoom or LibChat or something like that, but they didn't feel like they were really communicating. Some weren't comfortable with it. Some couldn't understand necessarily what was being talked about. The questions weren't answered. They couldn't, and especially in text and things like that. So making sure that you kind of look and go, okay, are there people who aren't getting the message this way? Maybe we need to do one-on-ones, that kind of thing. Just being open to everything that could possibly be a solution. And this is where talking to your colleagues and reading the articles and talking to your staff and your boss and people like that. So being open to all of the possibilities in any situation. I mean, think about it. Curbside, if you had said that last year, you would have been like, why, that won't work. That is the #1 successful service of every librarian I've talked to, pretty much, overall. Curbside, that's the one the patrons liked, it's the one the staff liked, and they got it down, worked well with their systems. We got it working really well with ours. That was just amazing. So opening ourselves to that possibility and doing it was very successful. So that kind of thing, having a contactless service, that sort of thing, online story times, who thought craft sessions. One of our customers in Louisiana had two teenage girls set up a camera in their or phone in their kitchen and did crafts for the younger kids, and that library posted them on their website. How genius is that? And that came from those kids. Hey, I want to do this. So just there's all kinds of things out there that you can be open to. So as long as you are looking at that and very flexible and willing to move and shift and just kind of go beyond, use your imagination. It may not work, but hey, if you don't think about it, it never will happen. And little things that we can do for each other. I mean, yeah, we smile at each other, you can't see it anymore, but there are a couple librarians I was talking to, they were leaving notes for each other for like the next shift that came on, things like that. Okay, and strategy number 5 is restore. That means to take care of yourself. I think one of the things that really came through when I talked to a lot of the librarians, and that's where the title of this came from, we just get to a point where we're so exhausted and we just can't think anymore, and it's just so stressful. A lot of it is because those of us in this industry really like to serve. We really like to give. And we have to remember there's not quite as much of us to give right now because of everything that's going on. So when you're planning for the fall, remember to plan time for yourself and for others to plan time for themselves. And don't try to bottle it up. You know what? If you need to cry, cry. I mean, that's the thing. Giving yourself permission is one of the things I found is like really to be able to say to another coworker is, oh my gosh, I feel very overwhelmed. To which they say, yeah, I get it. Let's see what we can do. So having that kind of as one of the things in your plan of making sure I'm checking in with myself to make sure I'm doing okay. And I like to do silly things. More than one librarian, and this was so surprising, I didn't know it was even still around. I don't have children that are young. More than one librarian mentioned playing Pokemon Go as a way for, quote, self-care. Some were doing it in the libraries. Others were just doing it on their own or something like that. So, don't be afraid to be silly and do just fun stuff with your coworkers and things like that, because it just makes you happy. It makes you less stressed. We all know laughter makes you less stressed. And I think the big thing that fits with all of these is the KISS principle. Keep it simple, silly. I know it's supposed to say stupid, but I don't say stupid. So just that as you look at everything you're doing and as you're going through all these strategies, it's like, how complicated do we really need to get? Maybe if we just honed it down, got really good at one thing, and then moved on to another, just whatever works for you. So in conclusion, for the summary, ascertain, get the tools available from your service vendors, check in with them, look at the trends in the library world, communicate your needs to the service providers. You pay us, that's what we're here for. Advocate, blow your own horn with marketing and public relations campaign. Remind the stakeholders of the fact that we're frontline essential workers. That's a huge thing, because those are the people who kept things going throughout. Listen and respond after listening. Of course, I can spell that, but I didn't correctly on the slide. Provide messaging proactively and reactively, making sure your whole staff gets the messaging, that sort of thing. And actually, and this is a customer success thing that we talk about a lot, is a compassionate hard no. Sometimes the best thing for you or for the customer is actually to say, that cannot be done at this moment or ever, that's just not possible. However, here are some other things we can do. And by trying to do everything for everyone is where we start to doing things not so great for everybody, and then nobody's happy. Pivot, flexibility, look for changes in processes, keep it simple, realize, reallocate, renew, and restore. Let it out and let it go. Don't try to do everything for everybody, and do some silly things, because that's what's going to get everybody through. And so on that note, I say, you got this.
Awesome. Thank you, Melissa. We're going to give everybody a chance that if you have not already entered in a question, you have a couple of minutes to go ahead and get that in. And while I am buying a couple of seconds of time here to let people key in any questions that they might have, I think this is a really awesome time, to point out the fact that we do have a poll on the screen. So if you haven't already responded to this poll question, please take a second and go ahead and answer the question if you would. We would greatly appreciate it. And also, after you've done that, I think this would be a great opportunity to point out that when you look at the 5 points that Melissa was talking about throughout her presentation, a shameless plug that I would like to make right now is for previous webinars that TLC has provided as part of this Webinar Wednesday series, because you can see that if you go through the archive, there's numerous webinars that we've done that kind of tie into what these 5 things, be it maybe talking about our friends from every library coming in and doing a presentation, or having a roundtable discussion back at the end of June with libraries actually speaking about what they were dealing with and how they were handling libraries in the time of a pandemic. So while we're taking a minute or two here to let people key in any questions they may have, I thought this would be a great opportunity to point out that if you go to tlcdelivers.com/webinars, as you can see on your screen, you can see that there are webinars that might interest you if you've not already attended. The other thing that I'd like to point out is our webinar next week. I do believe Melissa did mention we are doing a webinar to talk about Novel Branch. I would highly recommend, if you are interested in basically a self-service branch of your library system being available, I would recommend attending that webinar. You may find that pretty interesting and learn about some of the technology that's out there that might be able to assist you in your library services. And as I'm looking at the panel, Melissa, it does not look as though we have gotten any questions in, and we are just under the 3:30 time that we try to keep people at. So I think we've reached a really good time to wrap up this webinar. Melissa, I want to thank you very much for conducting this session. It was greatly appreciated. Everybody that is on this webinar, thank you very much for attending as well. Please, everyone, continue to stay as safe as you can, healthy as you can. Please continuing to wash your hands, which again, we should have been doing before Rona anyway, and I would ask everyone to continue to mask up. Thank you very much, and everyone have a great day.